Hi, I'm doing a how to help clients who depress masterclass online in 2025, and I want to invite you to it. This is Jurgen Rasmussen, by the way. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis vlog. So, why would you do that? Well, if you love seeing clients for a living, there are few experiences you can have that are more fulfilling and more meaningful than watching someone who used to be deeply depressed get back that look of joy and aliveness in their eyes. And just the honor of being part of such a journey is just freaking awesome. So, in this online masterclass, I'm going to be sharing with you what I've learned throughout the last 28 years of running a full time client practice. There's a lot of people out there who depress, there's a lot of people out there who could use help if you know how to help them. Now, this is the type of course I so wish that I could have had when I first started out, and frankly, well into my change work career, because when I learned NLP and hypnosis and various schools of psychotherapy, there was usually very little information about how to work specifically with people who have a tendency to depress. And people who depress can pose some rather strong challenges. And I'll mention these here as you know a little bit about what we're going to cover. So, for example, first of all, as Eugene Gendlin pointed out back in the day, he used to do research on what type of clients succeeded in psychotherapy. And the big thing he discovered was that the people who tended to succeed had voluntary access to a kind of nonverbal felt sense of their issue in the office. Now, when people strongly depress, that's often exactly what they lose access to. They often lose access to that felt sense. This is part of the reason why one of the typical things when people depress is that they struggle making decisions. They struggle making choices because to be able to decide or choose, you need access to a feeling that lets you know, feels right. I like that. But if all your options land on the same irritability or the same uneasiness or the same numbness, then this becomes extremely difficult. So, how do you work with someone when they've lost access to that felt sense? How do you get around it? That's one of the very important topics that we're going to cover. Related to this, a big hallmark, a big contributing factor to people depressing is rumination. People who depress tend to ruminate a lot. How can you help someone to ruminate less? How can you help someone to really decrease that overthinking? And what are the factors that go into people tending to overthink to begin with? And how can you address that? We're going to be covering this very specifically. Here's another challenge. Another typical perception when people depress is that sense of hopelessness, that everything is hopeless. Now, one challenge when you work with these clients is that they can have a tendency to, however you try to help them, they run it through that filter of hopelessness. How to approach that, how to get around that in working with a particular client. Here's another biggie. We've been sold a gigantic lie by psychiatrists and by psychologists and by pharmaceutical companies that depression is a chemical imbalance in the brain. This myth is so well and alive in our culture, and it is, of course, the foundation of people using these antidepressant medications. So many people believe that depression is wholly or partially a chemical imbalance in the brain. When people believe that, truly believe that, it's way rougher to help them. So, how can you educate your client out of this belief? I'm going to be sharing with you how I do that. And also, one more thing is, how about people who aren't that psychologically minded, who don't really have that capacity to self-reflect or access to much of their own subjectivity, people who operate from earlier stages of psychological development, teenagers quite often, young adults. Here, the typical psychological approaches can often be quite challenging. So, how to adapt when people operate from earlier stages of psychological development where people are less psychologically minded. We'll be looking a little bit about depression and relationships because that's also a very, very important factor. And also look a bit into the topic of suicide. I've worked with quite a few people who have been suicidal over the years, and I've also relatively well read on the literature on suicidology. Ha! Gotta learn how to speak and spell my later years. So, this is jam packed golden information. It's going to be 5 2-hour classes starting on March the 12th and ending on April the 9th. It's this year, 2025. I really, truly hope to see you there. You can find the information if you go to provocativehypnosis.com, click on the seminar page, and you'll get a link there that takes you directly to this seminar, information about it, and how to sign up. Again, really hope to see you there. All right. Thanks for listening.